They dazzled movie palaces with mile-wide smiles and gowns that glittered like starlight. Yet just outside the frame, ashtrays overflowed and makeup rooms turned into blue fog. Old Hollywood gleamed, but a quiet voice followed its queens straight into the grave. Here are 18 legendary women who could not break their bond with tobacco. We begin with the undisputed champion of chain smoking and end with a name whose fate still shocks even seasoned film historians. Tula Bankhead. Tula Bankhead turned chain smoking into a one-woman spectacle. Reporters clocked her at a cigarette every 7 minutes during rehearsals, the butt of one sparking the tip of the next, while her graveled laugh echoed through dressing room corridors. She favored unfiltered Chesterfields for the bite, ripping the paper filters off any brand a friend dared offer. Crews kept oxygen tanks near the wings because she would sprint on stage jangling with bracelets, blow through 6 pages of rapid-fire dialogue, then collapse backstage and gasp, "Darling, give me air, but do not forget my flame." The habit carved rough edges into her velvet contralto, making every line in Lifeboat drip with sardonic menace. By the mid-60s, she could barely manage short walks without wheezing. Emphysema hardened her lungs until pneumonia seized the final breath in December 1968. She was 66, wrapped in silk bed sheets, a half-smoked cigarette in the cut-glass ashtray at her elbow. Friends at her townhouse said the last thing she wanted before drifting into morphine sleep was another light. Betty Davis. Bette Davis did not smoke to relax. She smoked to conquer. Her morning routine began with a black coffee and 2 Lucky Strikes, inhaled so fiercely the tips glowed like blowtorches. 4 packs a day carried her through the brusque retakes on Jezebel and the pointed pauses of All About Eve. Assistants learned to judge her mood by the length of ash dangling from her holder. Steady meant approval. Sudden flick meant fury. The famous Davis rasp arrived when she was barely 30, but doctors could never convince her to soften the pace. In 1983, a stroke twisted her smile and slowed the machine. Yet she insisted on lighting cigarettes with a trembling hand during physiotherapy sessions, claiming, "This little flame keeps me fighting." Breast cancer surgery left her frail, though not repentant. She filmed Wicked Stepmother between radiation appointments, chain smoking off camera to get her voice back. October 1989 found her in bed at the American Hospital in Neuilly-sur-Seine, a shawl pulled to her chin as she whispered, "This has been a hell of a night. Match, please." She was 81 when the match failed to catch and her heart followed. Lauren Bacall. From the instant 17-year-old Betty Persk lowered her chin, looked sideways, and purred to Humphrey Bogart, a Pall Mall burned between her poised fingers. Studio press agents seized on the sultry picture, smoke curling around those famous cheekbones, voice low as cello strings. Offset, the habit grew ferocious. She pocketed cartons on USO tours and lit up inside troop tents, joking that the cigarettes lasted longer than the tents. Later, on the Big Sleep publicity junket, she reconciled interviews and long limousine rides by filling brandy snifters with cigarette butts. Marriage to Bogart meant late-night card games blanketed with haze. Their baby cradle allegedly smelled of stale smoke next morning. When Bogey died of esophageal cancer, Bacall promised to cut down, yet grief only deepened the addiction. Directors on Murder on the Orient Express remembered her finishing a scene, taking a drag, moving 2 steps, and asking for another take without exhaling. Decades of Pall Malls corroded her lungs. Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease left her gasping after short piano practice sessions, though she still teased grandchildren with, Your granny can whistle up a storm if she reaches her lighter. She died at 89 in 2014. Oxygen tubes taped beneath the still elegant jaw. A pack resting on the bedside table unopened, only because the nurses refused to grant the final smoke. Lana Turner nicknamed the sweater girl for curves. Lana Turner might have been called the smoker girl behind closed studio gates. MGM photographers routinely retouched publicity stills to erase cigarettes dangling from her manicured hand. Makeup artists kept lemon wedges nearby to bleach telltale yellow on her fingers before every close-up. She lit one before hairdressing, one during costume fitting, two more while waiting for her mark, and a final drag seconds before the director called action. Turner claimed the ritual calmed nerves rattled by paparazzi scandals, rocky marriages, and that infamous 1958 homicide trial involving her daughter's boyfriend. But soot and tar slowly replaced glamour and champagne. In the early 90s, she lost weight rapidly, choking when she tried to rehearse lines. Doctors found throat cancer and blasted it with radiation for 8 brutal weeks. The tumor shrank, scar tissue thickened, and she told friends she missed smoke trailing down the back of the throat. Cancer returned within months. A feeding tube replaced lunchtime cigarettes, yet cravings never eased. She died June 29, 1995, age 75, her final request to attendants: "Perfume the pillows, dear. Get rid of that hospital smell." Lucille Ball. Lucille Ball's laugh shook studio rafters, but the scraping cough between takes told another story. She first puffed Chesterfields backstage on the vaudeville circuit, claiming smoke steadied her nerves before slapstick pratfalls. During the whirlwind of I Love Lucy rehearsals, she stuffed script margins with burnt remains, sometimes losing punchlines beneath ash dust. Cameramen complained cloud plumes muddied early videotape lenses, forcing Desilu engineers to devise new vent systems above the audience bleachers. Her company, Desilu, greenlit Star Trek, Mission Impossible, and Mannix, while Lucy sat in board meetings tapping long ash into a water glass. Cardiologists warned of coronary artery damage, but Lucy quipped, "If this ticker quits, at least it kept good rhythm." In April 1989, the rhythm broke. Aortic aneurysm snapped. Surgeons patched the vessel during 8 hours of delicate work, yet decades of smoke-scarred tissue slowed recovery. Ball's lungs struggled to exchange oxygen even in calm moments. She lingered one precious week, cracking jokes about inhaling hospital air that tasted like cheap sets. On April 26th, she slipped away at 77, a prop cigarette case engraved with "Lucy Loves Desi" tucked in her dressing gown pocket. Marlene Dietrich. Marlene Dietrich treated every cigarette like a co-star, choreographing its entrance, its dramatic pause, and its sinuous exit through crimson lips. When Josef von Sternberg coached her in The Blue Angel, he insisted she learn how to lean into candlelight until smoke spiraled over one arched eyebrow. Dietrich perfected the pose, turned it into global fashion, and never laid the habit down. On bond-selling tours during World War II, she entertained troops in tents thick with dust and nicotine, singing Lili Marlene while flicking ash onto makeshift runways. In Paris retirement, she withdrew to a darkened apartment lit mostly by the red ember at the end of a French Gauloise. Visitors were rare, but those admitted described parquet floors coated with gray film and iconic tuxedos reeking of tar. Falls fractured her femur, confining her to bed, yet still she dictated witty letters through cigarette haze. While no single cancer claimed her, circulatory collapse came after decades of vascular abuse. She died May 6, 1992, 90 years old. Maids aired the flat for weeks before neighbors stopped smelling the smoke. Joan Crawford. Some stars serrated nerves with cigarettes. Crawford forged a brand. Her stern eyes, padded shoulders, and perfect lips almost always shared the frame with curling smoke, intended to suggest ruthless power. She began in flapper days, wheeling dancing partners across jazz clubs while exhaling between Charleston kicks. On Mildred Pierce sets, she insisted that cigarette breaks for extras be listed on call sheets to preserve continuity. She was rumored to keep a silver humidor filled with hand-rolled Cuban tobacco beside her Oscar. Scorching divorces and studio warfare magnified dependence. By the mid-70s, doctors diagnosed pancreatic cancer. She masked pain by retreating to her Fifth Avenue apartment, pulling thick curtains, sipping vodka, and lighting one more menthol after another. When close friend Van Johnson visited, he found walls sweat-stained yellow and windows sealed. Crawford died May 10, 1977, at 73, instructed that no funeral be held. The cigarette-charred mahogany desk where she revised her autobiography remained scented with sweet mint smoke long after collectors removed it. Katherine Hepburn. Katherine Hepburn embodied athletic independence, yet lit lucky strikes with sailor's ease since the summer stock days in Connecticut cabins. She believed cigarettes kept her spare frame from adding extra pounds and lent extra grit to her Yankee accent. On African Queen's malaria-infested locations, she puffed, while Humphrey Bogart downed scotch, both counting who survived longest in the humidity. Hepburn outlived almost everyone, but her lungs paid. Essential tremor began to rattle teacups during TV interviews, and though often attributed to genetics, neurologists whispered about heavy nicotine's neurotoxic toll. In her 80s, she hiked trails around the Fenwick estate, clutching a walking stick in one hand and a lighter in the other. As emphysema deepened, she sat on her porch, gazing across Long Island Sound, oxygen tube hidden beneath a thick turtleneck, whispering, "Don't you dare feel sorry." She died June 29, 2003, aged 96. Ashes scattered at family land, where spent cigarette ends once dotted the soil like confetti after a summer party. Audrey Hepburn. War starvation in the Netherlands left teenage Audrey Hepburn frail and anxious. British soldiers handed out Kents when they liberated the town, and she accepted the calming ritual. Success thrust her onto brightly lit sets, where nerves returned, so she lit more. Crew members on Roman Holiday said she stashed cartons in bicycle baskets, puffing while pedaling between takes along cobbled lanes. During breakfast at Tiffany's, she often smoked two in quick succession, so her hands stayed busy while the cat squealed on her shoulder. She promised UNICEF doctors she would quit to set an example for malnourished children. But traveling through drought-plagued villages only fueled the need for quiet relief. When rare peritoneal cancer bloomed in 1992, friends chartered a private jet home to Switzerland. She spent final nights watching moonlit snow on alpine peaks through French doors, occasionally lifting a cigarette to lips too weak to hold it. January 20th, 1993, dawned silent. She was 63. The butane lighter engraved "Love, Givenchy" lay beside a candle that had burned down during the night. Rita Hworth studio chiefs transformed shy Margarita Cancino into red-haired bombshell Rita Hworth, but they also handed her satin cigarette holders to lengthen lines of her arms in publicity portraits. Between choreographed hair flips in Gilda, she inhaled Philip Morris so deeply, smoke leaked through parted fingers during dance spins. Tobacco soothed heartbreaks from failed unions with Orson Welles and Prince Ali Khan. Even when memory began slipping in the early 70s, she remembered how to light a match. Doctors diagnosed early-onset Alzheimer's and urged absolute abstinence. She replied, "I already forget most things, but never that first drag." As the disease erased language, she sometimes raised an unlit cigarette to her lips, waiting for a spark only her caregivers could give. Hworth passed May 14, 1987, at 68. The private funeral was fragrance-free, yet mourners claimed they caught a faint odor of smoke drifting by the casket. Judy Garland. Judy Garland entered show business at 13, shoved under MGM Klieg lights that baked her skin and studio diets that starved her stomach. Nicotine joined amphetamines as coping mechanism. On The Wizard of Oz, she smoked off camera to keep from snacking on craft table cupcakes the producers forbade. Decades of concerts found her backstage, gulping vocational pills washed down with drags, then stepping into limelight to belt over the rainbow with throaty ache only cigarettes could sculpt. Chronic bronchitis forced cancellations that deepened financial despair, which in turn multiplied cigarettes and pills. June 22, 1969, found her collapsed in a London bathroom at 47. Official cause: barbiturate poisoning, accidental. Unofficial whispers: a heart worn thin by infinite stimulants and tens of thousands of inhales. Barbara Stanwick. Tough childhoods sometimes shape steel. For Stanwick, tough also tasted of tobacco. At chorus girl boarding houses, she swapped cigarettes for spare gloves, then carried the trade-off onto sound stages. Directors praised her ability to cry on cue. She claimed smoke irritated tear ducts just enough. While shooting Double Indemnity, she timed puffs so that a curl escaped her lips on the word insurance, adding menace to the line. Decades later, filming TV miniseries The Thornbirds, smoke machines filled a church set and mingled with her real cigarette cloud, triggering sudden bronchial attack. Doctors diagnosed severe COPD. She refused hospital oxygen, calling tubes props for the dying. Yet by winter 1989, the disease hogtied her powerful presence. January 20th, 1990, her heart surrendered at 82. In her West Side apartment, the final ash rested atop a script for a Western pilot she never filmed. Elizabeth Taylor, from National Velvet Youth to Cleopatra Queen, Elizabeth Taylor's life ran on diamonds, drama, and Dunhill cigarettes. She claimed nicotine dulled waves of back pain from a childhood riding accident. On Giant's wide-open Texas locations, she puffed in shade, while James Dean revved engines nearby. They compared smoke ring tricks between takes. Later, with each broken marriage, she replaced wedding bands with cigarette holders shaped like serpents. Multiple pneumonias scarred lungs, steroids swelled her face, but quitting felt worse than the coughs. In 2004, she underwent congestive heart failure procedures that limited her stamina, yet not the craving. Friends recall her 2011 Cedars-Sinai ICU room smelling faintly of talcum powder and tobacco, though no flame had burned for days. She died March 23, 2011, at 79. Her pearl clutch contained a gold lighter presented by Richard Burton during their first honeymoon. Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo cultivated privacy like a fortress, but the occasional passerby on East 52nd Street knew she was home when wisps spiraled from an open top-floor window. She favored Sobrani's Black Russians because their charcoal paper disguised stain marks on fingers. Post-retirement mornings started with brisk Central Park walks, a cigarette glowing like a lighthouse through fog. Neighbors said she sometimes paused at the reservoir, eyes glossy, exhaled, and whispered in Swedish to the setting sun. kidney failure and pneumonia cornered her in Lenox Hill Hospital, spring 1990. She kept a leather pouch of cigarettes at bedside, though oxygen tanks forbade lighting them. Nurses reported she stroked the packet gently, as though soothing a pet. She died April 15, 1990, aged 84, requesting no funeral because the smoke has cleared. Irene Ryan viewers loved Granny's cackle on the Beverly Hillbillies. They never heard the wheeze off camera when Irene Ryan carved through a camel. She learned to smoke in Texas tent shows, claiming harsh desert air made gentle brands useless. By the time sitcom stardom arrived, she could finish half a pack between setup and action. Cast members begged her to rest her lungs, yet she joked, "If Granny quits nipping moonshine, she might quit cigarettes too." Broadway beckoned in 1972 with the musical Pippin. 8 months into the run, she collapsed mid-song, thin fingers still pinched, as if holding an invisible cigarette. Doctors found a fatal glioblastoma and arteries encrusted with plaque, linked to lifelong smoking. She died April 26, 1973, age 70, the scent of stage fog mingling with her final exhale. Mae West long before censorship codes, Mae West blew smoke rings at hypocrisy. She brandished ivory holders like scepters, delivering suggestive quips through dancing embers. On nightclub stages, her entrance often involved stepping out of a swirling cloud she generated by lighting a succession of Parliament cigarettes behind the curtain. Offstage, she claimed nicotine-sharpened timing for double entendres. By the late 1970s, strokes nibbled at her notorious vitality. Doctors traced compromised carotid arteries to decades of heavy smoking. But Mae snorted, "When I'm good, I'm good. When I'm bad, I get better, darling." 2 strokes in summer 1980 silenced the voice. Partial paralysis halted the hand that struck matches. She died November 22, 1980, at 87. Archivists cataloging her apartment found hundreds of jeweled cigarette cases stuffed in dresser drawers like trophies. Julie London. Julie London crooned torch songs soft as velvet, yet studio microphones also captured faint crackles of cigarette paper. Starting at 16, she inhaled 3 packs a day. Liberace teased she, sang through smoke-stained roses. Her huskier 1969 album, Yummy, 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 owed texture to scalded vocal cords. While filming the medical drama Emergency, she hid cigarettes inside prop drawers and puffed between takes, ironically playing head nurse saving heart attack victims. A massive stroke in 1995 robbed speech. Still, she gestured for matches, prompting nurses to tape no smoking signs above her bed. Blood cancer arrived in 1999, delivering relentless fatigue. On October 18, 2000, cardiac arrest ended the silence at 74. Her husband, Bobby Troop, wept beside a table where Julie's last pack lay sealed. Lipstick kiss imprinted on the cellophane. Jean Harlow Hollywood's first platinum starlet floated through the early 30s like champagne fizz, but Lucky Strikes fueled the illusion. Press photos showed her luminous grin. Set photographers captured the other reality. Harlow, head tilted back, smoke haloing bleach-white curls while hairstylists applied toxic peroxide. Medical charts note frequent colds, kidney infections, and exhaustion by 25. During Saratoga's shoot in 1937, she swayed with fever, yet insisted on finishing scenes, supported by Clark Gable's steady arm and a menthol to clear the head. Acute kidney failure erupted. Hospital corridors smelled of antiseptic and burnt tobacco after panicked friends paced while smoking. Blood transfusions failed. Dialysis barely existed. She died June 7, 1937, only 26. The industry, stunned, hurried to ban filming cigarettes for publicity stills of young ingenue, too late for the girl who once promised, "Cigarettes keep me burning bright." They lit up screens and themselves. Behind satin and celluloid, 18 dazzling careers smoldered under the same ember: nicotine. For some, smoking etched a trademark rasp. For most, it carved arteries and lungs that betrayed them later. Which revelation shocked you? Was it Tallulah's flaming Bible or Audrey's field mission smokes? Share below and join our next voyage through Scandalwood, where brilliance always casts a shadow.